Hello, guys. Welcome to the Weekly Assist. My name is Mateo and we are going to be meeting up with Dylan Freeman soon to go over some draft analysis, some XFL analysis, and some decade draft for tight ends. Really quick, I'm going to go into news. There isn't much news in the NFL besides Combine, which we get into later. In the MLB, Luis Severino is out for the year, and he needed Tommy John surgery, which is a big blow for the Yankees. And spring training has started and is in the hustle and bustle of the season. The Astros continue to get hate throughout their many visits. The authorities are stealing the signs of people that are putting Astros hate signs, which leads to the joke of stealing signs again. And the Astros have already been hit by 7 pitches in spring training after around a week. In the NBA, not a ton of news. Of course, the All-Star game, which is kind of old news by now, so I'm not going to get into it. But yesterday, the Memphis Grizzlies had a huge surprise win over the Lakers yesterday, and the playoff race is heating up. Now we'll go over to our talk with Dylan Freeman. All right, and now we are here with the Dylan Freeman, and we're going to talk about XFL now. Dylan, which team would you like to go into first? We're going to recap the teams through 3.5 weeks, as the last 2 games of Week 4 have not occurred yet.
Yes, excuse our absence, but we will be going through the entire league, recapping every team, and just an overview on every team and exactly how we feel about this new league. So we'll start in the East with the best team, arguably, in the East, the 2-1 St. Louis Battlehawks, Mateo Arenas' team.
Yes,
on offense, their main weapons are DeMarco Pearsonell and Jordan Tiamu, and they're their most productive players. Tiamu is not afraid to run at all. He's a very aggressive runner. Tiamu is the quarterback of the St. Louis Battlehawks. He's a very aggressive runner. He leaves a little bit left to be desired when it comes to throwing the ball in his decision making, but he seems to be getting better as every week goes on.
Yes, now they are the 3-1 St. Louis Battlehawks after a big win yesterday. And I think, first of all, they have a great home field advantage, especially because they do not have an NFL team in St. Louis. So the fans really show up to these Battlehawks games. They've only had 2 home games, but it showed so far. I think they've definitely been a run-first team so far this season. They have a 3-headed backfield led by Matt Jones, former Redskin, and they also have Christine Michael and Keith Ford. So I think they need to lean into Tiamu, his legs more. Last game, they definitely lent into his legs. He was the leading rusher, and he did a lot of good things in the air too. So I think he's a great young quarterback that is going to be a great leader for this team.
Yeah, they are run first. They run a lot of RPO type plays. Tiamu works best when he's able to get the ball out of his hands fast. When he drops back and he has more time to kind of show off that faulty footwork and is a little off decision making at times, that's when he kind of does worse. But when he's able to get the ball out of his hands quickly and wide receivers are able to get good separation, that's where he works best. And they use him a lot for option plays. They have design QB powers that he does very well in.
Yeah, he can't really handle blitz, but I think that he is definitely a solid thrower, and I think that if they develop his arm, he could be a great option and one of the best quarterbacks. Right now, he is one of the best quarterbacks because there's plenty of teams that have a lot of quarterback problems, but I think he could be like one of the guys that stays in the XFL for a while, develops, and possibly ends up in the NFL one day.
We talked a lot about the offense, and although there isn't much to say about the defense, they are a very balanced team between offense and defense. They do have one star on this team, and one of the defensive stars in the XFL, Kenny Robinson, safety of the St. Louis Battlehawks. He left college to come play in the XFL for a better opportunity and a better chance, or just a chance at being paid. And he's supposed to go as early as a 3rd-round pick in this year's draft if he decides to enter, which is a very cool story. It might be interesting to see if more players do that. Some players, they need that education because they're not going to be a 1st to 3rd round pick. And they may even go undrafted. But players that are really high up there and have very high potential, they might want to go to the XFL to get paid and then be able to enter in the draft.
Yeah, he's definitely a prototype opportunity that many other college players could look at, and even out of high school to look at if they have great, immense talent. And it could be a different path to the draft than the 2 to 4 years of high school that other players go through. College.
Yes. So now moving on, the next team in the East is the 2-1 as of week 3, 2-1 DC Defenders, who are believed to be one of the best teams in the league. I know we weren't going to go week by week, but I just wanted to talk about week 3 here, where they played the LA Wildcats, and they faced adversity in this game. They faced a high octane offense in the LA Wildcats, and they really struggled. They got blown out in that game, and it's kind of interesting. Week 1, they played the Seattle Dragons, not very good. Week 2, they played New York, who have proven to not be very good. And they finally played a somewhat hopeful team, and they just got destroyed.
Yeah, I was going to say they had 2 dominant wins over poorer teams, and they finally faced a challenge, and the challenge came in the 0-2 LA Wildcats, but they cannot live up to the adversity. And Cardell Jones, he's been a really good quarterback. Some were saying he's the face of the XFL. I think that shifted more to PJ Walker by now. But he made some poor throws, and it led to 4 interceptions in that last game against the Wildcats. He'll really look to bounce back today against the Vipers, which are another poor team. And they have a good coaching staff, good defense. They're definitely a very well-rounded team that we will probably see late into the postseason. But it was a poor loss. It's early in the season still. They're still getting adjusted to the XFL life, but I think they're still a very solid team in the XFL.
Yeah, Cardell Jones, he performed very well through week 1 and week 2 when he had a clean pocket and his wide receivers were able to get good separation. But week 3, the Wildcats really made him throw it into some tight windows, and he really wasn't able to do that. They didn't keep him in at the end of the game. He was performing very well. He got pulled in the fourth quarter, I believe, in that game against the Wildcats. And yeah, they need to really bounce back here. Their defense has performed really well, but again, against that high-octane offense with Josh Johnson and the LA Wildcats, we will talk about later, they did not perform very well. Their head coach is Pep Hamilton. I think he's a very good leader. I like how he speaks to his players and how he's able to talk to them and give them instruction on the sideline. And yeah, I think they're probably a top 3 team in the league still, even though they faced a tough loss week 3.
Yeah, one thing about the Defenders is they don't have a real solid rushing game. They have a couple of key guys like Abdullah. They have Brossette, I think, but they don't have like a real clear number one, and they don't have a running back by committee. So they really need to establish a rush game to get more pressure off of Cardell Jones when he's carrying the offense.
Yeah, and the next team in the East is the New York Guardians, 1-2, and that one win came very impressive in week 1. I thought they were going to be a very good team in this league, headed by quarterback Matt McGloin, former NFL veteran. And this team looked really promising, but through week 3, they really fall off. And the dissension with this team starts with that NFL veteran quarterback, Matt McGloin, who week 2 was complaining about how the play calls were horrible and this and that, which to some extent that may be true, but that's not what you want to see out of someone who's supposed to be your leader. And really, this just makes him feel bad. I think Matt McGloin probably feels like he's around worse talent and things aren't getting executed the way that he'd want it to, which makes him look very bad. And it's just all kind of a mess right now.
Yeah, I'm going to fast forward a little bit on this team. They had a big win yesterday against the Wildcats, and Matt McGloin was not playing, but I think Luis Perez has shown that he's probably going to be the quarterback of the future. He has much more leadership than Matt McGloin, and I think he's a very solid option at quarterback. I believe he was traded from the Wildcats to the Guardians really like right before the season started. But one thing about the Guardians, they had 2 blowout losses to very solid teams, the Defenders and the Battlehawks, but they don't have a clear dominant wide receiver one, so that might be key to helping them going forward. They do have Darius Victor as running back, who is emerging as the running back one going forward, but I think Matt McGloin, he had that big win week 1, but of course it was against the Vipers, who the Vipers are 0-3, they're not very good. But yeah, after week 2, he was super frustrated, didn't seem like he was being a team player, throwing his coaches under the bus in those instant interviews in the XFL that are infamous or famous that you're not seen anywhere else. But I think that Luis Perez could definitely be the quarterback going forward for these Guardians this season, as now they're 2-2 and still right in the hunt.
Yeah, I am feeling vindicated. I wrote this all out here before the week of 4 games that the Guardians played, and I thought Luis Perez, he was the only quarterback in the last 2 weeks for the Guardians to throw a touchdown pass, and he didn't get very many reps in week 3, but he did perform well. I think week 4 showed that he has a lot of poise, and he's not fazed by pressure very much. I don't think he feels that he has much to prove. He didn't play quarterback in high school, and he walked on at Texas A&M, And he just is out there playing because he loves the game of football. So you really see that. He's calm. He knows when he's made mistakes. He talked at the end of the game. He was happy that he won, but there were some opportunities that he felt he left out there. And I'm excited to see what he brings for the Guardians. Maybe they'll turn it around. There's plenty of game left.
Yeah, of course they're in a pretty tough division with having the Battlehawks and the Defenders there, but if they're able to pull ahead and one of them falters, I honestly don't think. I think that the two teams that come out are going to be the Battlehawks and the Defenders, but
Yeah.
if one of them falters, they could pull ahead, especially with this newfound offense, newfound RB1. And Luis Perez, he could be a good quarterback option, just like Jordan Ta'amu for years to come in the XFL, if the XFL does continue. But I believe that he will. It will. I'm very confident in the XFL.
Yes. And the last team in the East, and maybe the worst team in the entire XFL, are the 0-3 Tampa Bay Vipers. They're really confusing, if I'm going to be honest. Their offense is just so shambled. They've had 3 quarterbacks play through 3 weeks. I'll start with Aaron Murray, who played week 1. He has like all the SEC records at Georgia. He was the Georgia quarterback for I believe 2-3 years. He's not very good. He didn't perform very well at all in week 1, and he's been injured up to now. And the past 2 weeks, they've rotated through quarterback Taylor Cornelius and Quinton Flowers. Taylor Cornelius is more of the prototype size, big, tall, pocket passer. He's got a big arm, but he leaves a lot to be left desired with decision making. He doesn't handle pressure very well. And then we have Quinton Flowers, the faster, more agile running quarterback. And it's really tough. It's been really tough for Coach Mark Trestman because he hasn't really grasped when to put in which quarterback. And it's hard for a quarterback when you're just waiting and you don't know if you're going to be in or you're being subbed out for just this one possession or one play. So it's really interesting to see how they're going to handle that in the future to turn this around.
Yeah, just as you touched on that, coming into the season, a lot of people thought the Tampa Bay Vipers were going to be one of the top teams in the league, and they have faltered. A lot of people thought Aaron Murray was going to be a top quarterback. He had a very poor first game. I'm going to say he got hurt in quotation marks, but now they've had these 2 quarterbacks, Taylor Cornelius out of Oklahoma State, who, is the prototypical quarterback, and Quinn Flowers, who's more of a runner. And I think if they want to succeed, they need to develop the offense around Quinn Flowers' legs, just as like Lamar Jackson on the Ravens. But Taylor Cornelius, he does not seem to be the answer. He had a pretty good senior season at Oklahoma State. Didn't really get into the NFL because he wasn't good enough. But Jalen Tolliver, the wide receiver, had a good last game. But they played some very good teams, and they're in a very tough division. So it's going to be hard for them. If going forward into a couple more years, they're really going to need to figure out a solid quarterback option because as many thought Aaron Murray was going to be the guy, he's one of the top picks in the draft. He did not seem to be the guy, and he still has time, but he's just had very, very poor performances in the chances he's had.
It seems like quarterback Taylor Cornelius has been able to lead the offense down into the red zone, but he hasn't been able to finish. And it's kind of been the opposite with Quinton Flowers. He's been able to finish in the red zone. So I don't know. Maybe they put in Taylor, and then when they get inside the 20, they put in Quinton, and he's able to maneuver around and get them in the end zone. It's just tough for Mark Trestman and this offensive staff to get anything together. If we're talking about the defense, they have defensive coordinator Jerry Glanville, who's got a very interesting
double headset.
What'd you say?
Double headset.
Double headset. There's a picture where he's wearing 2 headsets. It looks pretty funny, but he's got a very interesting and unique approach to the defense. It actually has a name. His defense is called the Grits Blitz defense, and it uses a lot of blitzing and swarming of the quarterbacks. It's kind of a defense that is made to make up for the lack of skill that you have at each position on defense. And it's been quite successful, I'd say. They're not really getting destroyed on defense. It's just the defense is on the field the entirety of the game because this offense is so poor.
Yeah, because the defense it's not horrible, but the offense is very poor. And especially Mark Trestman, he's made some, as you touched on, he has made some very interesting decisions on what quarterback to have on the field, like putting Cornelius on the field on like a second down, like a 2-point conversion where he runs like 40 yards backwards, and it would have been much easier just to have Quinton Flowers try to run it in. And he's made some interesting decisions. It's going to be interesting to see if Mark Trestman stays around for a little bit, but they're definitely one of the poorest teams in the league thus far.
And going from the maybe worst team in the league on to the West Division for the best team in the league, the 3-0 Houston Roughnecks, my team that I chose. I didn't want to choose a team from
Bandwagon.
I didn't want to choose a team from LA or Seattle where I've lived. I wanted to do something different. So I did choose the Houston Roughnecks week 1 before I saw any of this. They are the best team. They have the best quarterback and the best wide receiver in this league. I felt that the defense was a little poor, and I thought through week 3 that the DC Defenders were the better team. It was really close between the DC Defenders and the Houston Roughnecks. But after we saw what happened to the Defenders against the Wildcats, I think that Houston is just the best team by far in this league. It's absurd what they've been able to do on offense.
Yeah, they didn't necessarily blow out the Tampa Bay Vipers last week, but it was the Tampa Bay Vipers home opener, so there's a lot of momentum for them. But PJ Walker has shown that he is the star of the league thus far, and his connection with Cam Phillips is unmatched in this league. Cam Phillips is averaging 16 yards per catch. He has 324 yards and 7 touchdowns through 3 weeks. That's unheard of. They're the undefeated Houston Roughnecks. They kind of have a poor defense, but their offense is able to carry them through that. And they're developing a good rushing game with James Butler, who's averaging around 6 yards per carry.
From what I've seen, I'm not saying a franchise or a starting quarterback in the NFL, but I think PJ Walker is an NFL caliber quarterback.
He's definitely the closest in the XFL.
He has the arm strength. He has the arm angles. He's displayed some crazy arm angles that you've seen from Patrick Mahomes and quarterbacks like that. His decision-making is very good. He has very great pocket awareness. He's able to elude rushers quite easily, and he has great accuracy outside the pocket as well. And when he leaves the pocket and he runs and maneuvers around, he's running to extend the play and to throw the ball. He's not running just to run. He keeps his eyes downfield, looking for the wide open wide receiver. And when he does have to run, he's very good at doing it. Cam Phillips is to PJ Walker as Tyreek Hill is to Patrick Mahomes and Amari Cooper is to Dak Prescott.
Yes, definitely. On to the next team, which is
the other Texas team, and that does sound disrespectful, but the Dallas Renegades, the 2-1 Dallas Renegades, they are no joke. They are a very good team. First week, QB Landry Jones didn't play. They lost. Second week, 2 days of practice for Landry Jones. He played. They won that game, but Landry Jones admittedly said that he could have played much better. And week 3, it was Landry Jones' first week with a whole week of practice, and they had a great game week 3. They look like a very good team. They're very balanced. And I really believe in this Dallas Renegades team.
Yeah, Landry Jones is settling in still, but he still has an interception problem thus far. He has at least 2 interceptions in both of his games that he started. But I definitely think he is one of the best quarterbacks in the XFL. And he has a pro experience in the NFL with the Steelers, and he leads the offense. But they have Cameron Artis-Payne, who is a bell cow back for them. He is definitely one of the best running backs in the XFL, and he carries them. They have a good offensive weapon in Donald Partham, who's the best tight end in the XFL, and he could easily translate to the NFL. And they definitely have a solid team. They are the other team. And based on their performances, you wouldn't say they're 2-1, but I think going forward, they had a very poor quarterback. I'm forgetting his name right now, week 1, but of course because Landry Jones came in hurt. But I definitely think that they're a very good team, and Texas is loaded with XFL talent thus far in the inaugural second XFL.
Yes, Mateo touched a little bit on tight end Donald Parham, but I just wanted to talk about him a little bit. He had a standout game week 3. He played amazing. He's 6'8", 248 pounds. And
Beast.
He basically plays like a wide receiver. He's very fast, very agile. Week 3 versus Seattle, he had 5 receptions, 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's just great. This offense has been getting better week by week. And Landry Jones, he's very honest. When we're able to get in and he's interviewed right after an offensive drive or maybe even an interception, he's forthright about what he did wrong, and he takes full responsibility. And I think that's why he's going to be able to get better as the weeks continue, and he's getting more into the groove of this offense and how it runs, which this offense is ran by Coach Bob Stoops, who actually did bring in Landry Jones because he did coach him in college.
Yeah, at Oklahoma that was. So they definitely have a solid coaching staff with Bob Stoops. And yeah, the tight end is definitely a beast. I think they're a very good team, and going forward, they could surprise some people and have a very solid season.
Yes, and next coming up, the LA Wildcats, 1-2 LA Wildcats. who going into week 4, I thought they were going to be a big sleeper team. It seems like this league is kind of like a week by week league. You never know what's going to happen. DC, who we thought was the best team in the league, lost to LA, and now after LA lost to the LA beat the DC Defenders. Week 4, they went out and lost to the disgruntled New York Guardians.
Yeah, Josh Jackson has seemed to be the whole offense. They don't have much of a running game, but as you said, that Cam Phillips was one of the best wide receivers in the XFL. That is right there with Nelson Spruce, who has been a beast, and I definitely think he'll be in the NFL again because he was with the Rams for a little bit. So he was hurt last week. That was a large contributant to why they lost, but they definitely have two very solid wide receivers. They also have Trey McBride, who has developed into a very solid offensive weapon. Josh Jackson can definitely sling the ball. He put up 300 yards last game, and they still took the L. But they definitely need to figure out ways to finish drives, and that's definitely hard to do without a solid rushing game.
Yeah, Mateo's getting his NBA and XFL players mixed up a little. He did say Josh Jackson, who is
Josh Johnson. Yep.
Josh Johnson. He's been a journeyman. He's been around. There was a graphic the XFL put up. He's been on like essentially every single NFL team.
He was like he started a couple games like last year, right? Or 2 years ago.
On the Redskins.
Yeah.
He played a couple games, which was interesting to see him because he was in my mind because he had just played for the Redskins, and I'm like, oh, he's playing for the Wildcats. But yeah, I think I took all this before the week 4 game against the Guardians, and I thought that. So I think that week 3, the LA Wildcats game against the DC Defenders has been the most important game of the young XFL season so far, because it showed that there are some holes in this DC team that people thought the DC team was probably the best team in the league, and it showed that the LA Wildcats play with grit, and they have some potential here in this league. It's early; they're 1-3 now, but I think they have a lot of potential. And in that game against DC, former DC Defender wide receiver Trey McBride, who was traded from the DC Defenders for former LA Wildcat receiver Rashard Ross, he went crazy. 5 receptions, 104 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This game had a different aura about it. You could tell that the LA Wildcats players, they felt like they had something to prove. A lot of them had been traded from the DC Defenders, and almost after every tackle that LA Wildcats got on defense, you saw them getting up and getting super hype, and the energy was just clearly one-sided in this game. I think that some of that energy was lost in their Week 4 game against the New York Guardians, in which they did come out the loser, but there's some hope for this LA Wildcats team. And a team with a chip on their shoulder and something to prove is scary. Coach Winston Moss took over defensive play calling after Week 1. He fired their defensive coordinator, and he's kind of learning while he goes. He's a very serious guy. After they got their first win against the DC Defenders, they did the whole thing where they put Gatorade on him, and the picture's priceless. He's just stone-faced while he's getting Gatorade poured all over him. It's funny. Man, this offense, they have expectations to live up to, because the offensive coordinator and play caller is Norm Chow. He's been coaching for years, and he's very well respected. He's a legend in the game of offensive play calling. He coached at USC for a long time. He's developed offenses and QBs there for years, so they have a lot to live up to there at LA.
Yeah, as you talked about, their head coach, definitely Anthony Johnson. Was that what his name is, right?
Winston
Moss, my bad. He definitely seems like he's the most annoyed with the reporters during the games, and he definitely has a very distinct personality. But they fired Pepper Johnson after 1 week. They traded, I'm forgetting his name, to the Defenders, the really good defensive, I think maybe linebacker.
Linebacker.
Yeah, linebacker.
The linebacker.
Yeah, and they basically said that if you don't agree with our philosophy, you're out. So they're definitely creating a new culture in LA through 3-4 weeks, and I think that could be good for them going forward.
And now the last team in the West are the 1-2 Seattle Dragons. In my opinion, at least, they are the least exciting team in the XFL. They're kind of just average, you know. They haven't improved very much over the weeks. QB Brandon Silvers, I think he has no problem opening up at all. He's able to throw the ball downfield, but it's not always well. And his decision-making it leaves a lot to be desired. And I think he can get better as the weeks continue. But the Seattle Dragons team has kind of just been, so-so.
Yeah, the Seattle Dragons, Brandon Silvers, he was finally benched after poor play this week, and they shifted more to BJ Daniels. He's definitely been a more run-first quarterback, and that helped. He was the leading rusher,
Yeah.
and they definitely were able to put up solid numbers, but they're one of the teams that just don't have enough offensive weapons. They don't have any super solid wide receivers, any super solid running backs. They have a pretty all right defense. They have Marcel Frazier, Zach Schallmer's best friend, who had the big pick six, and that was like that was their win and one of their best like scoring plays of the year. They haven't really been able to score much. I think they have like one or two offensive touchdowns, but they definitely aren't like they are one of the poorest teams in the XFL right there with the Vipers.
Yeah, they're trying to have a balanced approach when they have QB Brandon Silvers in, and I really don't think he's that bad. I just don't think he's living up to the potential that he has. So in putting in BJ Daniels, it really just spices it up. He's a pretty good runner, and he's not a bad thrower at all either. It'll be interesting in week 5 to see if they start Daniels. I think they should, just to mix it up, and it'll maybe bring some life into this team. But week 1, it seemed like Coach Jim Zorn was completely lost with this offense. And there were times where he was trying to talk to QB Brandon Silvers, and what he was saying kind of didn't really make sense, and it didn't seem like it was going through to Brandon Silvers. And I was like, wow, Jim Zorn, he's not prepared for this at all, and he's not a good coach. But it did come out that after week 1, Jim Zorn actually took over as the offensive play caller. So during week 1, Jim Zorn didn't exactly know all of the offensive plays and all the kind of linguistics of how his offensive coordinator would speak to a quarterback. So he's kind of mixing in what he would say and what he think his offensive coordinator would say. So it was all jumbled up. But now week 2 and 3, he took over offensive play calling, and it seemed like he was getting more into a groove with it. But it's just the players on the field have not been executing.
Yeah, I definitely think they should go with BJ Daniels going forward. Brandon Silvers hasn't been impressive at all. He hasn't been able to finish drives at all. And Seattle is definitely a team, as I touched on, that needs more weapons. And I guess they could just do that going forward if the next year, the next draft. But they definitely need more talent. And I think they're probably the least talented, well-rounded team in the XFL, in my opinion. They had that big win against the Vipers, but I think that was more like the home field advantage because they have right with Seattle, St. Louis Battlehawks, they have one of the best home field advantages in the Seattle Seahawks, loudest stadium in the NFL. But they don't have very much talent, and they basically are just going to try to make their way through the season. They might need to make a few more trades if they want to make this season interesting at all.
Yeah, and now we've talked about just about we've covered every team throughout week 4 in the XFL, but now I kind of wanted to talk about the league as a whole. It is a new league, and I just kind of wanted to see how we felt about it. How do you feel about it so far, Mateo?
I really enjoy the XFL. It definitely bridges the gap between football, draft, and combine much faster. And it's kind of a dead time right now. It's like there's spring training starting for baseball. There's a combine. There's college basketball heating up. But right now, it's like nothing huge is happening. So it's definitely a great opportunity to bridge that big gap. And I think it's going to be successful for at least 4 more years. And I'm hoping it's even more longer.
Yeah, it's really not for everyone. I will say that. If you really love football, their slogan is "For the love of football." If you love football like I know I do, and I know
Yeah.
Mateo does, and I hope if you're listening to this, you love football too, because why else would you be listening? If you love football, this is a league for you. It's just more football to fill the time, and I think it's really good. If the league wants to continue through this first season and on to, let's say, just 4 more years, what really needs to improve is the quarterback play throughout every team, because it's clear – the clear thing has been, if you have the better quarterback, essentially you're going to win the game, because O linemen aren't as good. D linemen they're still competent. O linemen aren't as good. So if you don't have a quarterback who's mobile and able to make plays, it's going to make for a really boring game. And for people who are expecting NFL caliber games, which is quite unrealistic, they're really going to tune out if they're seeing a quarterback who can't hit their wide receivers. But I really do love the league. I think the transparency is great. You're able to hear the play calling from the coaches, and you're able to hear essentially every big time player on the field has a mic in their helmet, and you get to hear that throughout the entire game, which I really like.
Yeah, it's for the love of football. It's very unrealistic to see any product near the NFL because the NFL is the NFL. It's the top talent in the world of football. if there's an Olympics for football, U.S. would crush everyone. So it's like there's
Right.
no other NFL. The NFL is so unique. You've seen it with all these other leagues, but I think this one has the potential to be the most successful because they aren't competing with the NFL. You saw in the 90s, 80s, the USFL, they failed because they tried to switch it into the fall, which is the NFL's season. So as long as they keep these unique rules that even could shift into the NFL, I think this could be successful because it's for people that love football are waiting. There's no college football. There's no NFL. I don't know if you like arena football. I've never really got into that, but XFL definitely has the most talent compared to any other league that is available, and I really enjoy it thus far.
Yeah, one thing I can say for certain that the XFL totally has over the NFL by I think a wide margin is everything that goes on with the officiating. I think it's great. I think again the transparency is great. Anytime they review any play, you get to see the head official in the booth who's reviewing the play, and you get to see his entire thought process. So, because sometimes plays happen and things are reversed or overturned, and you're like, well, how did they see that? Well, now you see exactly what they're seeing. And it's kind of like, yeah, I get how that happened. And even if you disagree, you get to see the entire thought process of the officiating crew. And when they've made mistakes and they get in their little officiating huddle, they've admitted to it. And I think most of these these officials are like college level referees, so they're not doing anything at this time. So they're just out there because they want to be out there. And I think the officiating has been great.
Yes, and breaking news really quick, just to interrupt you, the Bengals have franchise tagged AJ Green, so he's going to be a
Oh,
weapon
wow.
for Joe Burrow. The 49ers are not getting him, and Bengals have a solid wide receiver one for next year for Joey Burrow. We'll get into
Oh,
the
wow.
NFL draft next. Yeah, as you
Actually,
touched
yes,
on,
right now.
yeah, but one really quick, as you touched on, I've loved the fact that we've been able to see the officials thought process through all the calls in the review booth, everything like that. Them talking to the other officials because it's really personalized the whole experience and show they're not just trying to screw over your team. They're just trying to make the best, most accurate decision that helps the love of football and helps the game move forward.
And next, we will be going into a segment of our top 5 players at the quarterback, wide receiver, and running back position in this 2020 draft. I think we're gonna do every position on the field. Maybe not offensive lineman, but I'd be down to do that. And this is subject to change. It's kind of the whole point because at some point I assume we'll be doing a mock draft.
Yes.
So up to then, things might be changing. And the draft, I believe, is April 26th. So we have a little bit of time coming up there. And we'll start with quarterback. Who is your number one, Mateo?
Unless you are out of touch with anything to do with football, you have to go Joe Burrow. He led this LSU team to the national championship. He is the most talented. He has the most heart, and I definitely think he is the number one quarterback selected in the NFL draft.
Yeah, I'm also going with Burrow. I'm kind of concerned that it looks like he's going to be going to the Bengals. We just had that breaking news from Mateo that he's going to be having AJ Green there to throw to. And I just think he's definitely the best quarterback here. Going into the 2019-2020 college football season, people were considered Joe Burrow as like a 4th-round pick, but he's just really proved himself at LSU there, and I think that's going to continue in the NFL.
Yeah, because the Bengals definitely have offensive weapons. They just never seem to be on the field at the same time with each other, and they don't have a good defense at all. They have John Ross, they have Joe Mixon, local boy. They have Tyler Eifert, they have Tyler Boyd. Now they definitely have AJ Green next year, so they definitely have a solid offensive weapons. So that's gonna be helpful for Joe Burrow. But the Bengals are a team that people have seen where QBs go to die. So hopefully he can change the stereotype and get the Bengals some winning seasons and actually get them a playoff win, which they could never get with Andy Dalton.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to me that Carson Palmer has come out and been like, don't go to the Bengals. Don't go there, because we all know what happened with Carson Palmer and the Bengals. And some people think Joe Burrow might pull a Eli Manning, but it doesn't seem like he's going to be doing that. I think he'll be fine. It is kind of interesting that he's been training with Carson Palmer's brother, but I think he'll go to the Cincinnati, and I think he'll have success there.
My number 2 is Justin Herbert. I am biased, I'll admit it. I'm a huge Oregon fan, huge Justin Herbert fan, but I think long term he is going to be very successful in the NFL. He's a prototypical quarterback. He has a great arm. He's Senior Bowl MVP, Senior Bowl practice week MVP. And I definitely think he's a great leader and can lead teams to very successful seasons. In teams like the Chargers, who have a bunch of weapons, I think he could be a great fit for them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to tell you my number 2, but I'm not necessarily going to hate on that pick because I don't really dislike Justin Herbert. Some scout and draft analyst has said that he has, quote, Mitchell Trubisky written all over him, which I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think he has better arm talent. He has better decision making. Sometimes his vision is questionable, but I think he might be a week 1 starter on an NFL team. I think he has a potential to live up to that. But my number 2 is the Tua Tagovailoa. I know there's been injury issues, but besides that, for a while he's been the consensus number 1. And some, if he was completely healthy, would put him over Burrow by not a very close margin. I think Burrow is better, but I think Tua, when healthy, is a very, very good quarterback.
Yeah, I think I agree. Tua Tagovailoa is definitely a very solid quarterback. He'd probably be my number 1 or 2 if he didn't have that big injury, but it just depends on how he is. No one has seen him since that gruesome injury in Alabama, which had Mack Wilson replacing him. So I definitely think he'll be very good. It just depends how he recovers and how quickly he recovers. If a team rushes him back to start week 1, I definitely don't think that's a good idea. So I think he should go to a team that maybe has a quarterback option. Maybe he goes to the Dolphins and they start Josh Rosen, giving him a chance week 1, and we'll see. It's going to be a very interesting draft process. Tua Tagovailoa is my number 3.
Tua is your number 3. Okay,
yes.
Herbert is my number 3 for all the reasons that I stated when we talked about Mateo's pick for him at number 2. Who is your number 3, Mateo?
Tua Tagovailoa is my number 3.
Okay, and number 4, I think we have the same here.
Jordan Love.
Jordan Love out of Utah State. Yeah, I think a lot of people are making some, maybe some would say far-fetched comparisons to the Patrick Mahomes. I think he has a similar rawness about him. He's not proven, and he has a lot of talent. He's a great athlete. He has a great arm. He played at Utah State, where last season his stats, if you looked at his stats, you'd say, Dylan, Mateo, what are you talking about? How can this guy even possibly go in the first round? But you got to consider that at a school like Utah State, they can't just bring in top quality players every single year like an LSU can. The quality of players around him changed drastically from his season and this past season. But he's a very good quarterback. I think if he goes, many people have him going somewhere like the Colts. I think if he goes to a team like that where he can maybe even sit out the entire 2020-2021 season and he comes in and plays his sophomore season, then he's going to be very good.
Honestly, I feel like Jordan Love is going to be overdrafted. I feel like he's going to be drafted in maybe later first round, probably not a playoff team first round. I think he's a second round talent, but I definitely think that he has talent. If the team decides to play him week 1, that's definitely not the right option. He was playing at Utah State with zero talent around them. He definitely needs a better coach, better mentor. Maybe if he does go to the Colts and they sign a Phil Rivers or they just stick with Jacoby Brissett, they could mentor him through. But I definitely think he can be a good talent. It really matters on which team is developing him, because if he's just left there to die, he's not going to be in a good situation. So I definitely think he has a hope, but he's not going to be Rookie of the Year in 2020.
Right, that's what I'm scared about. I'm scared a team – there's been a lot of hype for him lately. He was kind of unknown, but as it's been closer to the draft, he's gotten a lot of hype. I'm scared that a team that knows they need a quarterback right now is going to take him thinking he's that, and he's just not going to live up to it. He needs to go to the right place where he can be groomed for at least a year, and I think he might surprise a lot of people.
So my number 5 is kind of a wild card. There's a lot of good, talented options in the quarterback field. There's, of course, Jacob Eason. There is, what's his name, out of QB1 in Georgia. I'm forgetting his name.
Jalen Hurts?
Yeah.
Jake Fromm.
No, Jake Fromm. There's Jalen Hurts out of Oklahoma. But my pick is Cole McDonald out of Hawaii. Here's why. I think looking back in 10 years, any of the guys are going to have like very successful careers, but I think Cole McDonald has the best possibility. He has a very high ceiling and very low floor. He has immense arm strength. He can basically throw across the whole field. He's a running quarterback, and that's what teams are shifting towards. He played at Hawaii with very little talent around him, and he threw like 400 yards a game. And I think he could be a wild card to be a very good quarterback going forward. I don't know if he's going to be drafted. He might be undrafted free agent, but I think if he gets a chance, he could really surprise some people.
Yeah, I like that pick. I think it's kind of a 3 to 4 man race in this QB draft. Although those top 3, top 4 are very good. I'm not hating on the Cole McDonald pick. I've seen him play a few times, and I'm seeing what you're telling me. I'm seeing that arm talent and that athleticism. But I think I have 2 here because I couldn't really pick. My split here for the number 5 quarterback is between Jake Fromm and Jalen Hurts. There was a lot of hype for Jake Fromm, not after his last season, but the one before that. He's played very well, and I don't know. He's just fallen off the map, and his name really isn't mentioned very much. But I think he's a good quarterback. His arm isn't very strong, but his decision making is good. He's good in the short to mid range, and if he can develop that arm talent, arm strength, and learn how to use his body and his legs more, he could develop into what many people thought he would be. And then we have Jalen Hurts, who is essentially the quite opposite of that. He's a running I'm not going to call him running quarterback. That's rude now, but he's a very athletic quarterback. He can run very well, and that's really where the league is moving to. So if he goes to the right place, I think you can use him like that. It might be disrespectful to consider this, but maybe if he goes to a team that already has a franchise quarterback but is on the older side, and they use him as, let's say, Taysom Hill for 1 to 2 years while also grooming him and getting him to be a more refined quarterback, to where when that older franchise quarterback retires or leaves, he's able to step in. I think that's the best situation for him.
Yeah, I agree. Jalen Hurts definitely has talent. It just depends if he can develop his arm better, because he is a runner. Of course, he got outplayed by Tua Tagovailoa in that national championship game. But one thing about Jacob Eason, who none of us really chose him in the top 5, but a lot of analysts have him in his top 5. Washington Huskies are my second favorite college team, and I've watched him very closely this year, and he hasn't impressed me at all. He doesn't seem to be a great leader. Even Jake Browning, who was the prior Washington quarterback, seemed to be a much better leader, even though he didn't have nearly the amount of talent as Jacob Eason. But I just don't think he's going to be a top caliber quarterback to be successful in the NFL.
And that wraps up our quarterbacks. I'll go through mine again. Number 1, Burrow. Number 2, Tua. Number 3, Herbert. Number 4, Love. And number 5, Jalen Hurts, we'll say.
Mine is number 1, Joe Burrow. Number 2, Justin Herbert. Number 3, Tua Tagovailoa. Number 4, Jordan Love. And number 5, Cole McDonald.
And next we have wide receivers, and this is one of the best wide receiver classes that I've seen in a while. And I'm more adept to scouting, let's say, wide receivers and quarterbacks, because I'll say I know the position better. And this wide receiver class really excites me. I'll start with number 1 out of Alabama, Jerry Jeudy.
Jerry Jeudy is my number 1 pick too. I just think it's him and CeeDee Lamb are definitely at the top. I just think that Jerry Jeudy is faster. He's more of a natural, and he's going to be a beast for any team that gets him. And I definitely think he's also out of Alabama. He could be like Amari Cooper and be very successful, but he's definitely going to be one of the best wide receivers in the league for years to come. And going to that, my number 2 is CeeDee Lamb, who is right there with him. He has great athleticism. He has great hands, and he is right there with him. I think in many other years, he'd be the number 1 option, but number 1 wide receiver prospect. But this is just such a loaded draft class that CeeDee Lamb is my number 2.
Yeah, that is a really tight 1 and 2. Many people have CeeDee Lamb as number 1. Others have Jerry Jeudy as number 1. CeeDee Lamb is also my number 2. I think they're really close. Jerry Jeudy just runs extremely crisp routes, and that's just beautiful to see. CeeDee Lamb, he's a great route runner too, but I think where he shines more is his run after the catch ability. But I think Jerry Jeudy just edges him over. And number 3 in this race, who has been overlooked a little bit, except for here after the 40-yard dash, is the 4.38 runner, or 4.27 runner, Henry Ruggs.
Yeah, Henry Ruggs is definitely a burner. He is crazy fast, but he also has the other skills. He's in a burner like John Ross or
Right.
Corey Coleman, where he's basically just a fast runner, but he definitely has the other skills to back up his playing style. And I think he's going to be a Tyreek Hill type player that can be very successful in the NFL, where the quarterback can throw very far and throw the deep ball to him, and he's going to be very successful too. This is just a extremely loaded wide receiver class.
Yeah, I think the difference between those top three is Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb have potential to be number one wide receivers. I don't exactly see that out of Henry Ruggs. I see him as a complement to somewhere like a Michael Thomas or a possession catch type wide receiver, where he's a burner who can play in the slot or they can move him to the outside. But I think Henry Ruggs is very good. And my number 4 is wide receiver out of Clemson, the big bodied T. Higgins.
Sorry. Yeah, my number 4 is also T. Higgins. He is definitely a go up and get it type wide receiver, kind of like Mike Evans. And he was with Trevor Lawrence, who is a great quarterback. So he definitely had more like higher draft stock if he went into the draft last year, but I don't think he was eligible after that big Clemson season. But I think he is also a very good wide receiver that could be a solid weapon if he was a complementary wide receiver with someone else. And kind of like the Chris Godwin, Mike Edmonds type of thing. If there's another wide receiver that could complement him, it could be a very successful duo.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a team here. I guess you could. I think Mike Evans is quite the stretch. I think T. Higgins is very good, but maybe you want to compare him to more to a player like Mike Williams, Chargers wide receiver.
Yeah.
He really needs to be in a position where, again, like Henry Ruggs, he's a number 2, but he's number 2 to a faster, more agile number 1 wide receiver, and that's just makes for a really nice 1-2 punch. Again, like we've seen in Tampa Bay with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans.
Yeah, so my number 5 is Justin Jefferson out of LSU. He wasn't necessarily the top option like the top wide receiver in LSU last year. What was the number 1's name again? I'm blanking.
Ja'Marr Chase.
Yeah, Ja'Marr Chase. He was going to be a beast next year out of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
But he's definitely a good wide receiver. He had the most draft stock increase since the combine, where he had a great 40. A lot of people had skepticism around his running times, but he definitely showed out, and I think he's going to be a very solid option. He's probably going to go later in the first round, if not second round, but I think he could definitely be a steal at his draft position.
Yeah, listen, it's really hard because this is a top 5, but there's just so many good wide receivers in this class. There's players like Laviska Shenault, Brandon Ayuk. There's so many good players. My number 5, actually, it was going to be Brandon Ayuk, but after watching the combine, it changed to Justin Jefferson because he's considered more of a bigger body, taller wide receiver that he profiles to be. But after he ran that quick 40 that surprised me and many other people, I'm putting him there at my number 5. He definitely had the production at LSU, and I hope that's able to continue to wherever team he goes. He'll probably go to a good team because he's going to fall, I think, out of the first round, maybe into the mid-second round.
All right, now going over to recapping my wide receivers: number 1, Jerry Jeudy; number 2, CeeDee Lamb; number 3, Henry Ruggs; number 4, T. Higgins; and number 5, Justin Jefferson.
And I have that exact list as well.
All right, now for running backs, I mixed it up a little bit. My number 1 is J.K. Dobbins out of Ohio State. He is a 2,000-yard rusher, and he seemed to do it effortlessly. He's a very good running back, and I think he can put up solid stats and be a key number 1 guy for many NFL teams.
Yeah, this is really close. I like DeAndre Swift over J.K. Dobbins. It is very close. For those same reasons that you like J.K. Dobbins, I like DeAndre Swift. He's a very quick, fast guy. He's able to make quick cuts and find his way through the hole. And when he's in open field, no one's catching him. I think DeAndre Swift is a very good player. J.K. Dobbins as well. That's a very close 1 and 2. I know we had CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy very close earlier, but I think this is just as tight.
For number 2, I actually threw a curveball. I did not pick DeAndre Swift. I went with Jonathan Taylor, number 2. He is a back-to-back 2,000-yard rusher, and he has just been a beast for Wisconsin. He was pretty much Wisconsin's number 1 option in the offense last year. They didn't have a very strong quarterback, so I think that he could just be a great running back that just abuses the defense and he runs for tons of yards every game.
Yeah, Wisconsin produces very good or I wouldn't say producers,
Melvin
but
Gordon, yeah.
right, running backs who have played at Wisconsin at their time at Wisconsin, they've performed very, very well. I think Jonathan Taylor, I don't know why, but I've seen players like Cam Akers, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Zach Moss, no disrespect to those three players at all, but I've seen them ranked much higher than Jonathan Taylor in some pre-draft rankings, and that's really confusing to me. He's quite the bell cow running back. He's ran for back-to-back 2,000-yard seasons, and he's produced immensely for this Wisconsin Badgers team. And he came out and he ran, I think, a 4.42 40, something like that, which is very surprising for a player who has been deemed a bell cow pack. But I think he's going to be really good in the NFL. I have him as my number 3.
So is your number 2, in fact, DeAndre Swift?
My number 1 is DeAndre Swift.
Oh, number 2
is J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, DeAndre Swift is definitely a very solid option. I'm not going to go into him a bunch because you already touched on him, but he's my number 3 just because he doesn't put as many yards as other guys, but he was in a more offense that had a better quarterback. So my number 3 is Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of LSU. Is that your number 4? Dylan?
That's my number 4, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, yes.
Yeah, so I think he's a very good running back. One reason why I did have Jonathan Taylor so high, just touching back on that, is because based on his ranking, I think that he could be a really good steal compared to drafting a running back much earlier. So that's why I do have him at number 2. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he played in a very good system. He played with a lot of talent around him, and I think that he could translate that to the NFL.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think he's a starting running back in the NFL. I think he's he can go to a system where they run 2 to 3 backs at a time each game, and he's able to rotate in and out in different situations, and that's where he's going to fit best. But if a team is drafting him expecting them to be their RB1, then that's not necessarily what they're going to get.
Yeah, a lot of NFL talent have already came out and praised him, thinking that he's very good. The likes of Mark Ingram and LaDainian Tomlinson have put great faith behind him. My number 5 is Zach Moss out of Utah. There's a lot of guys around that number 5 cusp, but I just think him because he pretty much carried the Utah offense that came second in the Pac-12 to Oregon last year, and I think he could translate to the NFL pretty easily. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think 5 is kind of a tight spot as it's been for QB and wide receiver. I think it's between Cam Akers and Zach Moss. But if you're going just based on stats and you do look at production, you've got to take Zach Moss for all the reasons that Mateo just stated.
All right, and now recapping, my number 1 is J.K. Dobbins, number 2, Jonathan Taylor, number 3, DeAndre Swift, number 4, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and number 5, Zach Moss.
My number 1 is DeAndre Swift. My number 2 is J.K. Dobbins. Number 3, Jonathan Taylor. Number 4, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And number 5, Zach Moss.
All right, after we did this year's draft, we're going to do another decade draft where we go back the last decade from 2010 to 2019. And we say now we're on to our favorite tight ends from each draft. Starting with number 2010, it was a killer draft. If you know what I mean, Aaron Hernandez. But of course, it's going to be Rob Gronkowski, who is the best tight end out of this draft.
Yeah, killer. Just killer. Killer. Just tight draft between the top. We had Gronk. We had Aaron Hernandez.
Jimmy Graham was there too.
Aaron Hernandez. I don't know if you know him, Jimmy Graham. But obviously, I'm going to take Rob Gronkowski here.
Yeah.
Sorry if any of these jokes didn't touch with you.
Yeah. All right. For 2011, there's Kyle Rudolph and Julius Thomas.
Wait. My AirPods died. Mateo.
Are you just talking to your microphone, I guess?
Is it going to be okay?
Yeah, it's going to be fine. It's not that much different.
So it's fine?
Yeah, lead into 2011.
Okay. Next, in the next year, 2011, we have Kyle Rudolph, Charles Clay. It wasn't the best of classes, but I'm going to take Kyle Rudolph, the Vikings tight end.
I picked Kyle Rudolph as well. There's Julius Thomas in there who, after his first year, he looked like to be very promising for the Broncos. Of course, then went to the Jaguars, and now I don't think he's anywhere. So Kyle Rudolph has proven to be the best out of that, with him even catching a game-winning catch in the postseason last year.
Yes.
2012 is very poor. Just Kobe Fleener, pretty much. And I just picked him because him and Andrew Luck had a great connection out of college at Stanford, and they met up on the Colts together. Of course, they're both out of the league now, but Kobe Fleener, he looked very solid, and he had a great connection with Andrew Luck in his first couple years.
Yeah, this is a poor draft, so any chance I get to pick a USC guy, I'm going to take him. Rhett Ellison, he's been around for a long time. He's quite old. He's been in the league for a long time, and he's still in the league. He's on the Giants. He's not very good. It's just he's still in the league, and this draft was poor.
In 2013, it was loaded. Tyler Eifert, Zach Ertz, Vance McDonald, Travis Kelce, Jordan Reed, and Luke Wilson. But you have to go with Travis Kelce as he is the second best tight end in the NFL.
Yes, second. Very important to mention that he is the second, not best. Second, two, not one in the NFL. But obviously, you're taking Travis Kelce here. I really like Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is obviously the third best in the NFL, many would argue, but you got to take Kelce here. And in 2014, no, go ahead. That's all you.
You can go.
2014, it was an okay class. There was really just two. I don't really know where the second guy is right now or what happened to him, but it was Eric Ebron and Austin Seferian-Jenkins, and I'm going to take Eric Ebron.
It also had Richard Rodgers, who had the famous Rodgers to Rodgers Hail Mary catch, but it definitely is Eric Ebron. He is a free agent. I don't know where he's going to go, but he's been a solid option for the Colts and the Lions in his career. Mm-hmm. In 2015, another very poor draft. I have to go with Jesse James. He was on the Steelers. He had some promising talent, but never really worked out, so that's it.
Yeah, Jesse James, many thought he'd be like a breakout tight end after he had one good season, but there's also Max Williams in this class, Nick O'Leary, Jeff Harriman, and Tyler Kroft, who I am picking. Tyler Kroft's been injured quite a bit. I think he's on the Bills now, but when he's healthy, he's been pretty good, and I'm going to take Tyler Kroft.
In 2016 is a two-man race who are both big free agents this year. Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper, but Austin Hooper out of De La Salle High School is definitely my pick.
Yeah, don't forget Tyler Higbee here, but anyways.
Yeah, but he's not close to those guys.
Right. Between those two, Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper has been able to stay on the field longer. Hunter Henry has had injury issues, and I am taking Austin Hooper for that reason.
In 2017, there was one tight end. Actually, there's a lot. It was a pretty loaded draft, but I'm only going to talk about one. In the 5th round, out of Iowa, George Kittle is definitely the best tight end in the NFL, and most certainly the best tight end in this draft.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of talent in this 2017 draft class for tight ends. O.J. Howard, Evan Ingram, David Njoku, Gerald Everett, but of course the best tight end in the NFL, drafted in the 5th round.
Behind Jake Butt out of Michigan.
Yes. By our San Francisco 49ers, George Greg Kittle, of course.
George Greg Kittle. 2018, I have two guys, Dallas Goedert and Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews had a monster season with Lamar Jackson last year, so he's my pick.
Yeah, 2018, Mark Andrews. I like Mike Gesicki as well on the Dolphins now. Dallas Goedert behind Zach Ertz on the Eagles. I'm taking Mark Andrews just purely because of that production he had last season in that Ravens offensive scheme. But I think if Goddard was put in that position or put on a team where he's a starting tight end, he showed some really nice promise, and I think he'd be a good player if he wasn't on the Eagles. But obviously that's not the case, and I'm taking Mark Andrews.
Yeah, when Ertz was out, he definitely was a very solid option for the Carson Wentz last year. In 2019, I have kind of a wild card. There's two guys that are picked in the first round out of Iowa, Noah Fant and TJ Hawkinson. But based on the value and based on the production last year, I'm going to go with Dawson Knox out of Ole Miss, who went to the Bills. And I think that him and Josh Allen are going to have a great connection for years to come.
I don't mind that pick either. I like the sleeper guys. I thought maybe you were going to be going with Irv Smith, who's on the Vikings, who hasn't really done much because he's behind Kyle Rudolph. But I'm taking TJ Hawkinson. He had like one or two really good games, but that's really
and then he got hurt. Yeah, he was out like the second half of the year.
Yeah, he's a very good blocker as well, and I think he can mold into a very good tight end as his career continues.
Yeah, I think that Noah Fant and TJ Hawkinson are going to be very good options for years to come because they both have solid quarterbacks around them as well. I just, based on the value, I think Dawson Knox was like a 3rd round guy. I just decided to go with him.
Yeah.
All right, and that is all for the decade draft. Say goodbye, Dylan.
Goodbye. I'm happy to be back on the podcast. I think Mateo's going to be talking about news or whatnot now, but I'm happy to be back and expect weekly uploads from now on, hopefully.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys all for watching and listening. This has been a great episode, and we will continue to do more frequent uploads again. Make sure to check us out on all platforms: Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Google Cast, Anchor. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you next week.